Hi guys, my name is Matthew Baker. I'm here to show you how to diagnose the starter in your Porsche 911 SC. This car here in particular is a 1976. The engine, transmission, and wiring is from a 1978, so we're going to sort of follow the steps to diagnose a 911 SC 78 to 83 model year range on this vehicle. This car in particular had a couple issues. I was driving it to work a couple of times. I turned the ignition on several occasions. It just wouldn't start. The problem was very intermittent. I had to find myself parking on hills in case, I had to jump start the vehicle, or sorry, not jump start, but push start the vehicle. I could easily roll it down, pop it in gear. Anyways, very annoying problem. One day I came back, turned the key, car wouldn't start at all. Tried it several times, nothing at all. So I'll go through step by step sort of what the procedure is on this and go through several issues that are common with these cars, common with the starters. In general, I did work for the auto parts company that supplies a lot of parts for these vehicles. The aftermarket Bosch rebuilds are really not good quality. They're practically just rebuilt in Brazil. The quality control is very poor on the rebuilt starters. And I had a coworker who explained to me that he went through 5 or 6 of these just to get one that actually worked. So there really aren't too many other options unless you go with like a high torque starter. This car in particular, I'm pretty fresh in my career. I don't have that much money to spend, so I like to try to do things myself. Try not to spend as much, try not to waste as much money as I can be on this car. So I just like to do it myself. See what's wrong with this original, or I should say rebuilt Bosch starter, and go from there. So first things first, I'll show you exactly what the issue is in this car. So you go over here, go to the key in the ignition, you turn it, fuel pump, everything comes on, nothing. Again, nothing whatsoever. The starter is not clicking, the starter is not turning, there's nothing going on at all. So the first step is going over to my little workbench that I created out of a wine box. Go to some basic tools here. Most important one for this job is multimeter. You could pick one of these up for 20 or 30 bucks at your local auto parts store. Doesn't need to be too fancy. Assortment of screwdrivers, just a few flatheads, pliers in case you need to, test the ignition switch or whatever, just for ease. Get an extra strong finger in there. And of course, if you are looking at this video and you do have an older Porsche, the Bentley 911 SC repair manual, which you can just get on eBay. Pretty straightforward. The battery, charging system, starter, it's all in section 270. This is specifically on page 270-7. You can see a schematic of the wiring system here. And that goes through, this is the, these are the terminal locations on the starter. Super straightforward, super easy, super basic. Number one, this is as if you're actually looking up at the starter from underneath the car. Number one is your power. You're gonna have power full time there, or you should have. 3, next big one at your your 3 o'clock position. That one is your starter winding. There, I don't believe that there are any wires connected onto here. That just transmits power from the solenoid to the starter, makes it turn and start the car. Number 4 is for the cold start valve. The car should be able to start without that, but it just aids in opening up the cold start valve for, I believe it's additional fuel maybe to go into the combustion chamber when the car is cold. Number 2, and this is the culprit in this case, the solenoid. And the solenoid wire mounts to the 12 o'clock position up at the very top of the starter. This one, should get power when you turn the key to that final start position. In this case, this car is receiving power number 2, but nothing's happening, so it most likely is the solenoid. Anyways, down here you can see exactly what these wires are called. We have the number 1, the big one, terminal 30 from the battery. Number 2, which is the solenoid, goes from the ignition switch, which I'll show you in a second. Number 4 is the cold start valve. Next page, And this is super helpful. I went through this little guide yesterday. You know, basically what happens, you know, what are some common issues in terms of starting the car, what's happening, what's not happening, just a little troubleshoot guide, where to check. And it's all pretty straightforward once you know the locations of the different components of the different wires. So, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that the car has power. Take my trusty multimeter. Take it over here. This is the luggage compartment where the battery is located. Obviously a lot different in many other cars. Now, first thing, you know, turn your multimeter on. I set mine to 20 DC volts, which is plenty. It just means that this will measure up to 20 volts. It's a 12 volt system, so that's plenty. Let's connect the first terminal to the positive side of the battery. Make sure it gets a good connection. Boom, done. Second, going to ground, done. And, okay. It is getting 12.31 volts, so that's a pretty good charge, probably 70% charged. Should be plenty to start the car though, so, you know, and this car's been sitting for a couple weeks. I just haven't had the time to get to this, but, yeah, that checks out, 12.3 volts. So we do have power. We know that the car has plenty. Next thing I want to do, let's go back to the starter itself. Easiest way, at least for me to do this, is to jack up the car, take off the rear wheel. You know, make sure that you're using a good hydraulic jack. Make sure you're using jack stands in case the hydraulics fail. I have mine right under there, under the torsion bar cover. So, crawling under here, I'm going to bring my multimeter right there, slide it under the car. And I do apologize for the lack of light, lack of space, but it is very difficult to work this camera and work at the same time. So there's the starter up there, right above the axle. Again, pretty straightforward system. You have here the body of your main starter, you know, just a dumb thing with no electronics on it whatsoever. Right next to it is the starter solenoid. That's the brains of the operation, make this thing spin, turn the engine. Alright, so I'll try to get a good angle here. Hold on. Let's see how I can turn this. This might be the best you're going to get, unfortunately, but you can kind of see my hand. This big black wire is the power supply, mounts onto the 9 o'clock side of the solenoid. This guy should have power full time, full 12 volts. Right next to it, right across from it, is the starter winding. That is, you know, I don't believe any wires are connected onto there. I could be wrong, but that one just activates when you turn the key. Power goes through actually it's this wire here at the very top. There's this orange, sort of orange and yellow wire. This one, I took it off just to test, but that goes at the very top. That goes at the 12 o'clock side of the solenoid, if you're looking straight up at it. So, again, super simple. Just a little spade connector. And then down below, this is the bottom wire. This is your 6 o'clock side of the starter. That's for the cold start valve, little yellow and blue wire. So the first thing I'm going to test is to see if I have power to the solenoid itself when I turn the key. And that's activated by this wire here. And all you need to do is take your multimeter and just stick the red terminal of your multimeter into this wire spade. And all you need to do, one side there. The other side of the the other terminal of the multimeter, the ground terminal, you're going to find a good ground for the car. In this case, I like to use the ground strap located on the transmission, which isn't too far. And yes, I do know I have a little transmission oil leak there. So the ground, I'm just going to find a good spot to stick it. And my connectors are small enough that'll just stick right in there. So you have one there, and then again, take your other terminal, this one here, your multimeter, and just find that solenoid wire, the one that goes on 12 o'clock, and then just put this one in there. This is where an assistant comes in handy. If you have somebody to turn the key, you know, definitely have them do that. In my case, what I did was I actually just placed my multimeter standing up like this. Since I don't have an assistant, I put my cell phone right here and just took a video of what's happening when I turn the key. So ultimately, when you turn the key with the spades in place, everything's all set. Set it to volts. Then go back, or have your assistant go back to the car. Turn the key to the run position or the start position, and you should see that spike up. The Bentley manual says anything above 7.5 volts is fine. I'm reading about 11, so perfect. I am getting full power. There is power going to the solenoid, so that's great. If you're not getting power, and again, this should only have power in the start position. If it doesn't, you might have, you might have a short. You might have your power not going to the solenoid. You want to check the wiring, and then just go ahead and set it to ohms, and you can check for resistance. If you're, the normal setting is if you're getting resistance, then that should only happen in the start position. If you're not getting any resistance, that's totally normal for not being in the start position. But if it's in the start position, you get no resistance, that's an issue. That's something completely different. You're going to have to track that wire, essentially all the way back where it goes into the luggage compartment and test that. So, we have power there. Next, what you want to do is just go to that, the other terminal, the big, the one that's located at 9 o'clock. Where this big black power wire connects. Just touch the terminal. And if you touch the terminal here, obviously you have the other black cable from your multimeter onto a ground. If you touch that, you should be getting 11-12 volts up to the starter, because that's going to be hot full time. So in this case, I have full power going onto my big black connector. I have full power going onto going into my solenoid, so I know that's fine. Now, what you can also do is, if you're suspecting it's your starter that's bad, just grab a well-insulated screwdriver, like so, with the rubber handle. And what you want to do is just touch the two terminals, touch the starter winding at 3 o'clock, and touch the big power terminal over at 9 o'clock, and see if the motor runs. And that essentially bypasses the solenoid. So let's see how I can finagle this in there. This might take a minute because I don't really have a great screwdriver for this, but one here. Oh, yeah, you can see that sparked, and you can also hear the motor running. So see if I can get that again. I really should get a better screwdriver for this. And again, it has to be insulated, or else you're going to get shocked. there you go. So I just touched the two, essentially the two big terminals. You heard the starter motor running, so the starter itself, the starter is fine because that's spinning, that's turning the gears. The gears are turning in the starter, so that indicates to me that the big actual starter is fine. You know, it's getting power. Everything here is okay, or should be okay. The brushes work. The thing that's not activating though is the solenoid. Again, I'm getting full power onto that first terminal. You know, I'm on the big black power terminal from the battery. I'm getting power there. I'm getting power to my solenoid, but the solenoid's not activating, so that means that the solenoid is bad and needs to be replaced. And again, solenoid is the smaller cylindrical piece with all the wiring connected up to it. So that's sort of a quick diagnosis. And again, if you're not getting power to your starter, that's an issue. If you're not getting power to your solenoid, that's an issue. My next video here, I'll show you how to look at the switch, and if you're having issues with the switch, how to resolve that. So anyways, hope that helped a little bit, and yeah, stay tuned for the next video on the ignition switch.